Hi, it's Miss Stephanie. I'm here to talk to the older crowd today, tweens and teens. We're going to be talking about some young adult book recommendations that I usually tell our patrons about when the library is open and people come in to ask for something to read. Do you know about our digital book, movie, and music collections all available on the digital streaming platform Hoopla? Well, we also have Overdrive available, so check that out too. You can actually borrow books right on your tablet or e-reader or your phone. We have audiobooks and ebooks available. And now, here are my recommendations. So, my first book I'm going to be talking about is called With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, who is a young adult fiction powerhouse. She's pretty awesome. She's written a lot of really great books. This is a really special story about Amani, who is a teen mom and looking into her options after she graduates high school. She loves to cook. She finds a cooking program in Spain she wants to apply for, but she has to go through all the crazy steps of applying for financial aid, preparing to live in another country, and through all that, keep maintaining normalcy for her daughter. There are a lot of young adult books about being a teen mom out there and navigating those obvious stresses. But I really like this story because it challenges the teen mom stereotype, and it's not very often you find a novel about a teen mom that actually has another hobby or passion, which we all know is not realistic. Because usually in my experience reading these types of novels, these characters turn out to be very one-sided, unfortunately, and only used for a plot device. So I do like this story a lot because Acevedo gives Amani so much more depth and a lot of characterization. And if you're into cooking, this is also a great choice. Imani is immersed in the Philadelphia cooking scene. She currently lives there with her grandmother in the book, and she uses the cooking lingo, quite often. It's a great read for ages 14 to 18. So the Riverdale comics have come back in the form of a television series, which is very popular on the CW. And the series now has had new young adult chapter books coming out for about a year or two, I'd say. Usually the books are by different authors, and each series will cover some form of supernatural occurrences in the town of Riverdale. And the main character will usually be different. It could be Betty, Jughead, Archie, or Veronica, the main four in the original comics. In this offering, available on Hoopla, this story begins a brand new series about Jughead being a werewolf. I know you're probably thinking, last time I checked, Riverdale didn't have werewolves and the supernatural. And you're right, they didn't until 2013 actually, when Archie released the first comic, Afterlife with Archie, that had any supernatural elements included in the formerly perfectly pleasant town of Riverdale. So this story didn't actually begin with the CW show. A lot of people assume that, but it was the Archie company's doing. These books are really fun. They have a lot of good authors writing them, and I'd say it's perfect fun for teens 12 and up that want something a little scary, but also with drama and maybe some football players and unrequited love. Yeah, it's something like that. The next book I'm going to be talking about is called When Dimple Met Rishi by Sunya Menyon, and it is probably one of my favorite books to come out in the last 5 to 10 years. It's an awesome read. It's about Dimple. She is done with high school and has her eyes set on going to college for computer science. Being of Indian descent, her parents would also like to arrange a marriage for her, which she disagrees with entirely. So there are a lot of clashing of generations here. Dimple wants to have a fulfilling career and be independent, and her family does want that too, but they also want her to fulfill her traditional familial obligations of an arranged marriage. So she then goes on to this computer science camp in the summer and meets a bunch of, people just like her that are interested in computer science and that are going into college. And there's a lot of laughter and gossip and meeting new people. It's a very fun read. Along with some wacky characters she meets, she also meets Rishi, who's another Indian teen who has the same pressures and the same woes as her. They obviously connect, and what they both don't know is that there's a hidden connection between them that will cause whatever they have going on to implode, and drama ensues in the camp. It's probably what people would call a beach read if this book were written for adults. It's a summer read for sure. I would say this novel is also good for ages 14 to really any age up till after that, because any adult, I think, would like this story too. This is a story I recommend often to a lot of who we would call tweens. That's ages 10 to 12. And especially if they're into science fiction or fantasy. Kenneth Opel's Airborne brings you into this world where Matt, the main character, is a crew member on a pirate ship, the Aurora. Weird thing about this ship is that it doesn't actually sail in the ocean. It flies in the air and operates like a blimp. In this world, the airplane was never invented, and these hybrid blimp ships are the most common form of travel. Matt meets a girl his age, Kate, who is a fancy socialite, something out of a story from the Titanic. And her chaperone is wacky, Mrs. Sumpkins, and you get to know them very well. They're pretty funny, and Mrs. Sumpkins has some funny stories. These characters are also vital to the story and part of Matt's adventure aboard the Aurora. It reminds me of Around the World in 88 Days by Jules Verne, or even Rudyard Kipling. There's lots of action and fast-paced storytelling, something that once you start reading, you'll keep going to know what happens. So Marissa Meyer is known for her series Cinder, which is a science fiction version of Cinderella, kind of. So I wanted to showcase another book of Meyer's because I feel like her other ones don't get as much love because Cinder is so popular. So this one is called Heartless, and it's another fractured fairy tale, as us librarians and teachers and bibliophiles like to call them. And basically what that is a traditional fairy tale that is told differently or has different elements to the story that make it very different. It could usually have a sci-fi element or a fantasy element, and it also happens to be a very popular form of storytelling in young adult fiction. And I think Meyer was probably one of the authors to make it that way, due to her tremendous success with Cinder. But anyway, Heartless is set in the world of Alice in Wonderland. It's about the Queen of Hearts before she was the Queen of Hearts, you know, in love from Alice in Wonderland. Kath, as she is called in the novel, meets Jest, who is obviously a jester. No need to ask what he does for a living after knowing his name. And they have an instant connection, of course. There has to be romance, right? At the risk of infuriating the king and her parents, since she is supposed to be wed to the king, she and Jest enter into a secretive relationship. A little Romeo and Juliet plot devices thrown in there. Kath wants to follow her heart and be with Jest, but the story that unfolds suggests that could never happen. Again, like when Dimple met Rishi and With the Fire on High, this is for older teens, 14 through 18. The next book I'm going to be talking about is called The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. It's a more recent release than When Dimple Met Rishi or With the Fire on High. It's about this girl, her name is Alice, and her grandmother passes away in the beginning of this book. She is living in a Gothic mansion that is called the Hazelwood. Her grandmother was a famous author of classic fairy tales that are very beloved by a passionate group of fans in the book. Then, when her mother also disappears after her grandmother passes, Alice starts to realize that maybe the world in her grandmother's stories, Hinterland, wasn't fictional at all. Alice teams up with a classmate, Ellery Finch, who is a super fan of her grandmother's, to try and find her mother. With Ellery's knowledge of the classic books, the pair start to embark on finding all of these creepy mysteries that also give a nice nod to the popular fairy tales we know from our youth. If you like this one, Melissa Albert's second novel in this series is also available on Hoopla and Overdrive, and that book is titled The Night Country. I would say this book is recommended for ages 12 to whatever, any age, really. I think adults might like it too. So 12 and up.